What is up, everybody? Welcome back to HVAC Uncensored. Normally, we always start off by giving love to those companies who help make this podcast possible. Being here in 2021, first of all, it's the first time we're really getting back at you guys with a live show, so to speak, because we've had a lot of pre-recorded stuff that we've put out because me and Kelley take off for the holidays. So I just want to say thank you to all the companies that help make us possible. All of them. Yellow Jacket has been huge for us ever since we started this. Service Titan, a bunch of them. We just want to say thank you to every single one of them. We hope all you guys had great holidays. You're setting your goals for 2021 and you're ready to crush it as we get going. That's about it, man. Let's get on with the show.
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless the United States, and thank you to all of our global listeners.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go.
If you're trying to take your HVAC game to the next level, then buckle your seatbelt, crank up the volume, and try not to be offended, because you're listening to the HVAC Uncensored podcast with Gil Cavey and Kelley McKay. Now, here's Gil and Kelley.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the HVAC Uncensored podcast. I am your host, Gil Cavey Jr., sitting alongside my buddy, old pal, Mr. Kelley McKay. What's up, my man?
What's going on, man? I'm excited tonight because we got a great guest.
Yes.
Yes. So you're going to learn a lot. So get your notebooks out, get your pen and paper ready to take some notes. So guys, from a one-person basement, well, let me first start off by saying Mr. Dan Antonelli is with us tonight. From a one-person basement shop to an award-winning design or to an award-winning agency, Dan navigated the tumultuous small business landscape and lived to tell the tale. Moreover, he's helped over 1,000 individual brands recognize the better side of business, all while building a best-in-class agency that's collectively earned over 200 design awards. Ever since he began hand lettering trucks at age 14, Dan has been chasing his passion for brand building and logo design. Dan is frequently recruited to speak at workshops and industry trade shows as a brand master and champion of small business success. The definitive industry expert on logo design for small business, Dan has authored 3 books on the subject and established Kick Charge Creative as the premier brand building agency for small businesses nationwide. His latest book, Building a Big Small Business Brand, is a critically acclaimed playbook for all things branding. Dan relishes helping small business owners and entrepreneurs crush their competition. As president of Kick Charge, he oversees all aspects of brand design and development. As creative director, he combines his design passion with seasoned brand building expertise. As the nation's leading small business branding advocate, Dan reminds clients to invest in their brand and embrace it as the rock-solid foundation of a successful business. Driven by his relentless desire to surpass the industry standard for small business branding, Dan operates with a single mantra in mind: be better today than you were yesterday. Welcome, Mr. Dan.
Wow. That's a hell of an intro.
It is. That is one hell of an intro.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So, I mean, we appreciate you being here. That's why when I talked to Grayson, he talked about you. I was like, damn right. I'm like, every good logo out there has got his name associated to it. So it is pretty awesome. I mean, you whether meeting you or not, your reputation, definitely
precedes you.
Yeah, precedes you. So you're definitely well known for what you do, man, for sure.
Thank you. Yeah. And thanks for having me on today. Really, appreciate this. I love talking about this and I love helping guide businesses on how to leverage this and how to make the most of it and help them get to where they want to go.
Well, I want to get into obviously you and what you do at Kick Charge, but obviously me being a friend of Chris, if you want to just briefly mention here at the beginning what you and Chris from Rhino Strategic Solutions are doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Chris and I, started working together and talking about collaborating on SEO and pay-per-click while we do web design on our side, Chris and his team are obviously so well known for the SEO and the pay-per-click work that they do, and they crush it on their side. So we said, like, wow, imagine if we can combine like great storytelling on a website and brand building on a website that we do here at KickCharge with your SEO backend work. Like, dude, like nobody's doing that. Nobody's putting those two things together and killing it on both sides. So we're really excited about working with them. You know, we know how well that a branded site converts compared to a generic type of site. So they really, I think, do so well with that back end world. You know, and I'm not really that excited or passionate about that back end world. I am passionate about what the words on a site will say and the aesthetics of that website. So you know, we have a great team here that does the design work, and a team of writers who write great stories about brands on websites. And then Chris and his team come in and they just kill it on the other side. So like, it's really cool that we were able to partner up and work together. So we're basically building our sites to their specifications. So we call them Rhino ready, because as soon as we're done and they launch, his team can just go in there and rock it. They don't need to do anything or change anything. They just need to do all the nitty gritty back end stuff that they're so awesome at. So it's pretty cool.
That is awesome. I mean, we cool. use, like I said, we use Chris and Rhino, and what they do is amazing. And like I said, talking off air, who knows, maybe here shortly, we might be using your services as well. But, and actually Chris will be on the podcast in a couple of weeks. So we'll just do we'll do a full tilt to come back. But I guess, I know we see in your bio, but I guess let people know, I mean, what happened? Like your ideas, like what made this blow up? Like what made it be so, what made you be the company you are today? Like what do you think?
You know, I've been obsessed with lettering. I've been obsessed with logos since I was really young, you know? So, you know, my brother got like, a souped up car, you know, when he was like 17 or 18, and then he'd have all these hot rod magazines and I'd see all this cool lettering on these hot rods. And I thought that's like, I was kind of into cars, but not like that much. I was more into the art on the cars. So I was like, oh, let me start lettering things. So probably like 13 years old, I started hand lettering things. I started learning sign painting. And the first truck that I lettered myself was an HVAC truck, right? So that's how crazy this is. I'm like 14, 15 years old, hand lettering my first truck. And it was, you know, with paint and brush and everything like that, because they didn't have computers back then. I'm dating myself. But so, you know, I was so passionate about that. And then I got a job in a sign company, and I just fell in love with the idea of lettering and creating these pieces of art. And I studied under a really great sign painter who taught me the fundamentals of design and the experience of lettering something on a van and how it needs to function in the environment, how it needs to be legible from a distance. All those things, that foundation I got, you know, I was like 17, 18 years old when I started there. And so I wanted to be a sign painter, and my parents were like, listen, you got to go to college. You can't be a sign painter. Like, that's not a good idea. So I went to college and I studied advertising. And while I was studying advertising, I was still painting signs. But the advertising education was really relevant and really important, because I learned so much about the art of advertising and how to couple those two worlds together. So when I graduated, I worked as a graphic designer for many years. And then I missed working with small businesses. I really did. So I started the business on the side. I was doing that dual job hustle thing, right? So I was working in New York City, commuting from New Jersey. I did that for like 3 years while I started building up the business. And, you know, I'd leave at 7 a.m, come home at 7, and then I'd work till 2. And I did that for a while. And I was you know, shot, but like no one in my family had ever started a business. They were like, well, I don't understand. Like, you have this stable job and then you got the side hustle. Like, why would you give up the stable job? I'm like, because I'm going to kill myself, first of all. And I'm not as passionate about my day job as I am as my night job. So I thought the idea of providing businesses with a single place to get all their stuff so it would all look consistent was really a key attribute for the foundation. So we knew, starting from a brand-centric approach, starting with that logo, then doing the vehicle, then doing their business cards and their uniforms. And then at the time, web was just getting in its infancy and we started designing websites. But I knew that like there was no reason why a small business couldn't get the same, the same work that a big agency was doing for a big company. They had the same needs, but no one was saying, hey, let's put all these things together under one roof so that small business can just go to one person or one company and get all those needs fulfilled. And then when the consumer interacts with their brand and sees it on the road, goes to their website, is handed a business card, it all looks like it's coming from that same company. And so that was the idea of, what I thought would make for a really good business, because like no one was really putting all those different pieces together. And, I worked out of the home for a number of years. I got an office in 2005 and hired, a few employees, and then we outgrew that space. And then in 2017, I built, this office that we're in now from scratch, and we have about 20 people here now. So it's been a great experience. It's been fun, and I think I'm just really we sort of live under the idea that certainly you need to design as if lives were at stake, because we know how much our work impacts the businesses that hire us, and the people who are here understand that what we do for that small business has the ability to change their lives. And so a lot of people here came from a corporate agency background, like they did work for Verizon or Campbell's Soup or big companies, and they just felt like none of their work made a difference. They weren't changing people's lives. And so we have a lot of those people that just love the idea that they come here and the work that we do really changes the lives of these clients that hire us, that we're blessed to work with. And that's what we love to see. Like we help them create jobs. We help them, build a business and are more successful. And that's what motivates all of us. And I think that's what we love to see. Like when we do our work and then we see how much they've grown and they've been able to hire people, or maybe they've just been able to take vacations or whatever, but we change their lives. And that's just a really strong theme that we have here is have our clients' backs at all times and understand that design has the ability to change people's lives and to take that responsibility like very seriously.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Love that. Love the story too. That's true. An entrepreneur, like you're just working the late nights and grinding and,
still grinding, but
yeah, right. One thing that I can, from the story that you shared and your passion about this, and I could also see just how what you do with all your training, and you mentioned being mentored under somebody who was, gave you that, the missing, I guess, the pieces to put the artwork together, that sometimes can't be taught in a classroom.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For you to be able to do that like over and over again, how exciting.
Yeah.
That's my thought, is like, how exciting is that? Because you're like building it's the creative, and it's challenging. I love that
as well, because like you'll do something and you'll step back and you'll say, this is the best thing we've ever done. Right. Or you'll win an award for it or something like that. And you're like stoked. And you're like, oh, cool. We won. Like last year we swept all the winners of the HVACR business tops and trucks contest. Right. Every winner was
so
ours.
Awesome.
So that's like really cool. But then you're like, oh shit, man, like, what are we going to do next year? And it's like,
right.
You got to outdo yourself. And it's a lot of pressure to live under that idea. But again, the idea of, being better tomorrow than you were today, that is really another thing that we really believe in. So you do something and it's like epic, and you're like, there's, I don't know how I'm going to top this, but I've been saying that, you say it for a little bit, but I feel like I've been saying that for 25 years and we always outdo ourselves, down the road, but it's hard. People like, I'll post something and people say, that's my favorite. That's the best thing you've ever done. And it's like you appreciate the statement, but you're like, oh shit, like, I got to do better now. Like, how do I top that? And it's a lot of pressure, and it's certainly a lot of pressure we all feel and put on ourselves, but that's what makes it challenging. Like if you get to the top of something, then where do you go after that? Then it's all downhill after that point. So like I kind of refuse to accept that like there's ever a top that we're going to get. Like I feel like we're at the top of our game, and that's cool and all, but like I can't say that that's the best we'll ever be, because as soon as I say that, then there's nowhere to go but down, and I can't accept that as a possibility for us.
The next one's always the best one.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I love, and I'm sorry, Kel.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and obviously you're the person to touch on. Me and Kelley get a lot of people that want to start a business, and you know how it is when a guy gets in a truck. What he's going to call his company is the least of his worries. Oh, I'm just going to call it Joe Blow's Heating and Air, or Gil Cavy's Heating and Air Conditioning Company. But when they get to a point, you know, I love, and that's what makes me like want to use your services, because hearing you the way you talked about, you know, it's so much to it than like most people. You go to get your truck wrapped and they're like, oh, well, this is going to look great. Okay, it's going to look great, but is it going to do what I'm paying for it to do? So I guess if you could just let these people know the importance of branding, like it, you know, you're paying a lot of money, but making sure that you're getting it done right, because just a fresh wrap is not necessarily the same thing as branding your company.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you know, just like you said, they're not thinking about their name. You know, they're thinking about, well, I got to get this thing going, and let me go in the state registry, and just my last name isn't being used, so I'm just going to use my last name. And they don't think about the implications of down the road, what's that actually going to mean? So naming as a first step is so important. Like we do a ton of naming, and a lot of it's renaming. You know, we do startups as well, but a lot of it's renaming, because they get to a certain point and they're like, we're not gaining traction, you know, and we're having to spend more and more money on our advertising to try to have people remember who we are. And they'll have things like a last name brand, which is very difficult to brand properly. They'll have an initial based brand like TJM Heating and Air, which is really, really hard for people to remember. And they forget that the whole point of a name is to have people believe something about the experience that they'll get when choosing to do business with you. So, you know, Pro Heating and Air, well, Pro and Heat, okay, which sounds professional, right? So I'm already making an assumption about your business based on its name. Okay. So why not lead in with something that's positive before they even know anything about it? Like even just saying on the phone, hey, I'm from, you know, Professional Heating and Air, which isn't a great name because it's generic, but, you know, something that sounds like a company that they would expect to get a good service from, like Air Pros. You know, we know Anthony from Air Pros. Like it sounds already, well, they're professionals. It says it right in their name. Instead of TJM Heating and Air, it's Air Pros. Well, one sounds better than the other in the absence of anything else, just the name. So, you know, people sort of put branding out as this kind of mysterious or more, you know, elaborate thing. And it's really simple. The idea of brand is to control people's impressions of your business and to counter bias. The other thing is too, homeowners are scared about who is coming to their home to fix their stuff, right? You guys are out in the field. You know what their fears are. You know what they're worried about. So how do we counter that? How do we counter the bias? Because I'm a homeowner. My heat's not working. I just called you guys up, and you come over and you say, hey, you know what? You need a new, you know, heat exchange. Okay. But really all I needed was a capacitor or something like that. How would I know the difference as far as what I need? So I have to trust you. So how do we build trust to the consumer? Well, we start by everything that they see. They feel something. They gain a sense of trust. Of course, when you walk in the door, you're continuing that story. But before you ring the doorbell, we want them to feel something about your business and have them expect a deliverable that is different than everyone else. So that's the foundation of why the brand is so important. And the other part too is that it will work so much better in your marketing. Okay, so you'll need to spend less money on the long term if you invest in the branding, you know, up front. And that's the part too, where we do so many rebrands and everyone's like, oh, I wish I'd come, you know, here first. And I understand why some people can, budget or whatever. I get it. And that's fine. But like when they see what happens after they've gone through the experience, and how much they've grown without changing anything at all about how they run their business or invest their marketing dollars, Well, how else do you explain the growth then? Like nothing changed except your truck wraps, your website, your uniforms, and those things. But yet we spent the same exact amount of money on advertising, and our business doubled in 24 months. Well, how did it double? Well, what changed? Well, you got so many more branded searches because now people know your name in the community, like stuff like that. And people don't realize how much you can leverage that brand. And again, those poor brands, those are the guys that need to spend 8, 9, 10% of advertising because they've got a poor brand. I'd rather, I want my clients to live in the 4 or 5% range. And people say, oh, you got to spend 10% if you really want to grow. And I'm like, well, if you have like a really bad brand, you definitely need to spend 10% if you want to grow. But if you don't, I'd much rather you live in the 5% world because it'll work harder for you. Absolutely.
No, that's amazing. Go ahead, Kel.
Well, I was one of those business owners for sure. I mean, just took the last name and ran with it. And for me, it wasn't just, I had learned a few things and learned that, okay, it's probably a good time to go ahead and rebrand my company. But the main thing about it was, we talked about this a little bit off air, but I'm 25 years into it. I've owned the business for 10 years at this point when we're getting close to rebranding. I'm kind of wanting to like step out of the limelight a little bit. And I don't want everything for the company for the rest of my life to just be on my name, if that makes, the whole point was to someday I'm going to be exiting this company and I want it to be a brand that somebody can take that's not a direct association with me. That sounds weird and funny. And I know business is all about relationships and personal, and it still is that. But I don't know if I'm thinking about this wrong, but you get what I'm saying. I think it was a case of just some separation a little bit. But we have a ton of people in our Facebook group, HVAC Uncensored Nation, and I'm Gil and I are in a bunch of groups, and we see a lot of branding that's happening all the time. And guys all the time are putting their brands up and saying, "Hey, what do you think of this?" So, what are some of the owners out there? What are they doing wrong?
Well, touching upon some of the things you just said too. People get to a certain level. And they get comfortable, okay, because it's very easy to be complacent in that level of success. And they say, listen, look at how well we're doing. Like, why would I ever change my brand, or why would I ever rebrand? Mm-hmm. It's gotten us to this point. Don't fix it if it's not broke, right? So you have a lot of times there's a lot of ego involved in statements like that because maybe they had a part in building the logo, or maybe their friend did it, or whatever. So they look at that and they say that is the reason why I should not change. And I look at it and I have this, it's actually a big sign on the wall here, and it says, "Success in spite of a poor brand is not a valid reason to perpetuate it." And basically that, in a nutshell, that just means like, just because it got you there doesn't mean that it can't be made much better. And seeing that vision and understanding, that is where, you have guys that are open-minded to it, and they know that, hey, you know what, it's time, like it's dated. It's not communicating who we are any longer. And then you have guys that are just like, it's gotten us here and I'm not changing. And I know, it's working and that's fine, but you could see so many examples of even bigger companies that are successful. Absolutely. But they're fighting that uphill battle because they haven't fixed the foundation. So I'm all about trying to make sure your foundation is rock solid before you start throwing a ton of advertising at it, because it'll be more effective if it is. And the other thing too is a lot of guys will say, well, I have a brand or I have a logo or something like that. And they sort of get those things confused as well because they're not the same. But then you ask them, well, what is your story? What is your brand story? What is the compelling reason that a consumer should choose you over someone else? And they can't ever really answer that. Or if they do, it's an answer that's the same answer that everyone else says. Oh, well, because we're honest and we show up on time and we provide a premium service. Okay, great. What exactly about that is unique to you? What makes you think you're so special with that brand voice? So, you think about how branding can lay the foundation to a bigger story And those stories not only affect the consumers that you're selling to, but they also affect the culture of your company. They affect the people that you're trying to recruit and you're trying to hire. You hear often, oh my God, we can't find people to work for us. No one wants to work for us. Can't find qualified technicians, right? You go on the message boards, that's what everybody's saying, right? And then, a lot of times you go and you look at their website, you look at what their culture appears to be, and you're like, well, I wouldn't want to work there either. It doesn't look like a place. Do you think Ken Goodrich at Gettle has the same recruitment problems that most other companies have? Well, why is that? Why does he not have the same recruitment problems that everyone else has? I don't know if you guys have ever been to his place in Vegas. When you walk into that place and you're blown away by what it is. And so those are the things too, the intangibles about that brand experience that they don't really get. So yeah, like, hey, this has been working. I'm not changing it. And people will always say too, like the other thing that they fall back on is they say, well, people tell me they see my trucks all the time. I'm like, well, that's cool. They see your trucks all the time. Being visible and being seen is one piece of the equation. The other piece of the equation is, what does the vision of that van mean to that consumer? When they see that van, what do they think about? Because that's the other part that a brand is trying to control. I'm trying to have them expect something when they see that truck. Just having that bright red truck with the white lettering. Yeah, people say they've seen your truck. Okay, cool. Now what? What do they feel about your business when they see that truck? Answer me that question. And that's the two-step process, right? Being seen is one, what it says is the other. And that's where, again, most guys don't get it. It's like they're only maybe getting one if they're lucky, but they're not getting two, most of them.
I would say, I would admit we're probably missing a chunk of that. I can't tell you because we haven't portrayed our company's story. So they're probably not feeling much of anything.
Yeah.
So, I'm just being honest, but it's something that we need to work on. Yeah. Absolutely. So
the other thing I would say too is the opportunity within your own marketplace to do something innovative, to do something disruptive is there for almost all areas. Most companies do not get this. They don't understand it. So I love it when I go into a market and I've got a client and he sends me his top 5 competitors and we research them. We see what their brands look like and we base our strategy on what we're seeing there, right? But I love it because it's almost like, this guy sucks. This guy's one is awful. This is not done well. This is, terrible colors. And it's like, to me, it's like, wow, there's the opportunity, because I'm not fighting to get number one on Google. I'm fighting to get number one in the community. And I have a much better chance at that when I've got these poor brands that we're competing against. I love it. It's like, that's the most exciting thing. I get all excited, but I'm like, really? This guy's number one in your market? Awesome. I love it. Cool. Let's crush it. Yeah. Because it's terrible. So those are the other parts of why the brand is so important, because we can capitalize on the fact that most people don't get it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Well, I know you're about the full, I guess I want your opinion about the full wrap. What is your opinion about the half wraps? Because right now we have the half. I think it looks pretty good. It looks decent, but compared to some of the wraps I've seen of yours, where it just, even being in the industry, that blows me away. So I could imagine if I was a customer looking at it, so I like the way we do ours, but sometimes I wonder about the half wrap when it's going in with a white truck.
Yeah. Is half the van white then, or the truck white?
Yeah. Yeah. So the back half is wrapped.
Yeah. So white is just a tough color as a brand color. So right now you're committing yourself to having white being one of your primary brand colors, and it's not an ownable brand color. So we always like to think about brands and pick colors that are unique in their market, right? So no one else is using those same colors. That's important. And think about how we can leverage those two colors on that full canvas. And honestly, I know they're cheaper to do the partials, but how much cheaper are we talking about? $1,000 a van, $1,500, $2,000 maybe, Yeah. So to me, the advertising value that we're missing out on the full doesn't justify saving that expense. So we very rarely do partials. Like I can't remember the last time we were asked to do a partial. From a creative standpoint, I feel like we're hamstrung then. Like I can't do what I want to do when I know I can only use half the canvas.
No, that makes perfect sense.
How often should somebody rebrand or consider rebranding?
Hopefully if you've done it right from the beginning, you should never have to rebrand. But if it's something that, no longer communicates who you are, no longer speaks to that consumer about a positive expectation, feels like it's either dated or, uses clip art or is just executed amateurs, like an amateur. Also, if it suffers from issues on the vehicle, like it has poor distance legibility, I can't read it from a distance. I can't get it embroidered on my shirt. It's always a problem. Those are some common issues as well. But, I want to say too, for us, we rebranded ourselves and renamed ourselves in 2017. So we used to be called Graphic Designs. That was the name of the company. That's what I called it when I started because we lived in graphic design and we also did sign work, mainly the trucks, right? 22 years later, I'm like, this isn't who we are. Like, we don't do this. Like, we don't even do signs. Like, why do we still call this? It doesn't make any sense. But I was like, same thing, ego. It's like, well, you know what? Like, we've been successful with this name for 22 years. Why would I change it? And I'm like, wait. That's exactly what I tell people not to do. Like, why am I so special? So I went through the experience rebranding as Kick Charge. It was such a great move for us. It's worked out amazing. But even like you're saying, when I told my family and other people and even employees that we were renaming, it wasn't like, oh my God, we're so glad you're doing that. It was like, what are you, crazy? Like, why would you ever do that? So there's a lot of baggage that people, an affinity for old brands. I say that they're like a warm blanket to the owner usually, right? So they don't want to take the blanket off because it's cold at first, right? But you have to get past that and you have to realize that on the other side of this equation, it's going to be so much better for your company if you invest in it. And, we got 1,500, 1,000 or so that we've done. I think we've done about 600 or 700 Hvac brands alone. Like, I've never really gone through the experience that on the other side, it was a bad idea. It just never happens. It's always been something where they're like, oh my God, I wish I had done this sooner. So I know it works. I know it connects with consumers. And one other point too, I would say, when you're talking about how do you know when it's time to change, remember too that when you started this company, if you played an active role in developing your own logo, a lot of what you probably chose about your logo has to do with you personally. Okay. So you're thinking about it saying, what do I like? What do I want my logo to look like? And that's fine. I want you to like your logo as well. But at the end of the day, I'm really more interested in what the homeowner likes and what appeals to them. So you've got to take yourself out of that equation a little bit and you got to say, hey, how can I build a brand that connects to that homeowner and makes them feel something about my company? And I think we're blessed to work with companies that do an amazing job after they ring the doorbell and they're inside the home. It's just before they're not doing a great job. So they're working to overcome that image, and then they get there and they're okay, right? They can overcome that. They can have the homeowner believe something about them after that experience. But I want to control how that homeowner feels about them before they experience anything, before they even call and the CSR answers the phone. I want to have them believe something about that experience.
So what makes the job hard for you? Like, say somebody comes to you to do a rebrand, and like you said, they have to know like their story, who they are, the message they're trying to get across. And I know that they're all different. Some people have their ducks in a row. Some people don't when they come to you, maybe. Like, what makes your job hard when someone comes to you? Like, if I come to you and I have no answers, like, it's just like, you have to baby me along. I mean, that's like
So things that can make it hard is a bad name. Okay. So if it's an initial based brand, I don't have a visual that goes with TJS Heating and Air, where as soon as you see this visual, you think about TJS. We branded Cardinal Heating and Air, actually 2 Cardinals Heating and Air, one in Seattle and one in Virginia, I believe. And when you say Cardinal Heating and Air, well, you close your eyes and you think about what that visual would look like. Well, it's going to be some kind of cardinal, I would imagine, right? Mm-hmm. So those are easier because I can make them stickier Like I can have them stick in people's heads. But for like a last name brand, it's harder, right? Because there isn't an instinctive image that comes to your mind when you say their last name. Like if it was McKay Heating and Air, well, where do I go with that? I'll have to conjure up or think about a story that we could perhaps tell. I'll have to think about a visual. Maybe it's a mascot. Maybe it's something else. I'll have to think about a tagline that maybe we could latch onto that name and I could connect that visual with this tagline and this name. So those are the ones that are harder because there isn't a natural inclination to connect those dots. So those tend to rely a little bit more heavily on advertising to connect those dots and tell the story, right? But names that instinctively you think about something, those tend to work a little bit easier for us and gain traction faster. Those, that's why last name brands are hard, but if it's a last name that everyone in the community knows, that's sort of the exception. That's when you say, okay, there's equity in this last name. But if you were to say, I'm starting an HVAC brand tomorrow, and I'm going to call it Antonelli Heating and Air, I would say that's a huge mistake. Don't do it. Call it something else because it's going to take people forever to think something positive about Antonelli. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. So do you get a lot of people that come to you and say, hey, I want you to do everything, like the name, the colors, whatever, or some people come to you like, I want this name or I want this color, or like that kind of takes away from what you provide? Well,
there's equity in certain things. If a company has been apple green in a community for 15 years and their vans have always been apple green, there's equity there. So I don't want to discount and throw away equity when I don't need to. But if it's, a $600,000 or $700,000 company and they're like 2 years in business, you have a lot more latitude. They can be a lot more nimble as far as the decisions that can be made. Maybe the name doesn't really work. You see a lot of guys name their company using the word mechanical. Like that's a mistake because homeowners don't know what mechanical means. So that would be immediately something that we would say, maybe we could keep the first part of your name, but we got to get rid of mechanical and replace it with heating and cooling or something like that. So, thinking about it from that perspective, we try to leverage as much equity as we can when there's value in it. If they've been established for a really long time, then name changes become a little bit harder. But sometimes they have a name that's so generic and they've been in the community for 10 years and no one still knows who they are. And so with those companies, it's like, we can change. I'll give you an example of, a client that we rebranded in Jacksonville, Florida. The name of the company was Air Source America. People didn't know if they did heating and air or if they provided oxygen tanks. And he's in there 10 years or so, and he was probably at $2.5 million, slowly, incrementally growing, providing an amazing service. Like the dude's got like 500 5-star reviews on Google, and they're not like BS, like legit. Like the guy doesn't sleep until it's a 5-star, right? So performing a great service, but his last name was Bueller. And everybody could remember his last name. And this is the only, sort of the exception to the last name rule is his name was a memorable last name.
Yeah. I saw his truck you did for him.
Yeah. So
that's amazing.
So we rebranded him as Bueller Air, and the tagline, "Stay cooler with Bueller." We've got a big picture of it's just a big head with sunglasses on, so the tagline, "Stay cooler," reflects back to the mascot, right? And he's gone, he's almost at 5 million at this point, and that's 24 months later and spending less than 4% on revenue. So he was always spending less than 4% of revenue and having those incremental gains. So now within his community in Jacksonville, everybody knows who he is. And he didn't have that before. So now he walks in a store and he's wearing a branded shirt and like, oh, I see your vans all the time. You're the guys from Bueller. And he's like thinking to himself, I've been in this community for 10 years. Nobody ever noticed me before. And now I can't go anywhere without someone noticing me. So that's, again, the power of that. And he was 10 years into it. And he said to himself, I'm not gaining the traction that I want, and I need to change. And so he was open to that. He was open to the name change. And that made sense. But, you have a lot of companies even using the word HVAC in their name, which is a really hard thing because, again, homeowners don't know what HVAC. Are you vacuuming something in my house? Is that a special kind of vacuum or like whatever? They just don't know. It's an industry term. It's not a consumer term. So names like that, names that don't communicate what it is you really do are things that are going to be harder to overcome. So, yes, if they have something worthwhile to leverage, we'll leverage it. But if not, then we got to just start over almost.
That logo was awesome. I saw that because didn't he get a boat with the logo?
Yeah, we did his boat wrap too. Yeah,
I saw the picture.
Yeah,
because our friend Tersh Blissett, who does, it's fine, who also has a podcast, the Service Business Mastery Podcast. But I know he had one of his companies was called Icebound, which I thought was awesome. I love the logo, but he said he had to change it because people were calling thinking that he was like an ice sculpting company. He's like, it looked good. He's like, but it wasn't defining what we were. Yeah. So he had to change his name just because of that. So I guess that makes sense. I was thinking about that when you said that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny when we did Jason's van, and this is the other part of comfort level where you have to remember that when you're, doing logo design for customers, most of them are coming to us because they want you to do something disruptive. But their instinct is to fall back to that safe zone, right? Because that's all they know. That's what everyone else around them has been doing for years. So they want to fall back to that idea and that comfort. And the day that his trucks were getting wrapped, he called me up and he's like, Dan, the head's too big. We got to make the head smaller. Like it's way too big on the side of the van. And I'm like, Jason, I am not changing the size of the head on the van. It needs to be this big. He's like, I don't know. It's so big. I was like, just do it. He's like, all right, I'm going to do it. And then I want to say the rest is history, right? Because it obviously killed it, but he instinctively was a little concerned because it was so far off the norm that he thought it was too far off the norm. And that's the idea of disruption and doing something that feels different than what everyone else is doing. And that's how you gain traction faster too. Because if it looked like what everyone else was doing, then no one would remember it. It wouldn't be memorable. So within reason, I'm not saying make your truck pink and orange. People would remember that, but they wouldn't think positive things about it. So you got to balance that. But as long as you can be disruptive while they still feel a positive expectation, then that's where you want to live in.
No, that makes sense. Because I always try to think about it like some of the dumb commercials. Like people are like, oh, that's that stupid commercial where they left things on top of their car. I'm like, but you remember it.
Hey.
So that Geico commercial. Well, those advertising people did their job because you remember that commercial.
Right.
So it's kind of I guess it's not the same because like you said, we want people to remember us, but for a good reason, not just, that ugly truck that rides down the road.
So where do you find time to write? That's what I want to know. You've written four books. Is that right? Three?
It's three. I started a fourth. It's hard, writing a book is really hard, and the last one that I did took me probably 3 years to write, but I'm really excited about doing another one because I feel like, almost like the theories that I was sort of nurturing in the last book, I've got like 6 or 7 years of data and case studies to support those theories now. And we've learned even more about how this works and how it works with consumers and all those things. So I'm really excited about doing another one because I think there's so much more to be said about the opportunities with small business branding and how to leverage it. And you guys think about it yourself too as you're driving and maybe you see a new restaurant opens up and they've got a really killer sign or they've got a really awful sign. You've already set in your mind an expectation of what that experience is going to be. And it's just no different than how you market, any small business or an HVAC company. Setting the expectation by what you present yourself as is really what it's all about. It's not mysterious. It's not like, that's it in a nutshell. Like, how do we control what they feel before they've done business with you? It's I want to say it's simple. Like that's really all it is.
Right.
So it takes you 3 years to write a book. It takes me 3 years to read a book. I don't know how long it'll take me to write one. Kelley's got a book. I got it back here.
And that took well over a year. Weekends. Okay. So where can people find your book, Dan?
They could get it on our site at kickcharge.com, or you could get it on Amazon. Okay. If you buy it on Amazon, great. I make like $1.50. So, it'll really help my retirement fund. And,
I agree.
You definitely don't write books to make money. I can assure you that. So
no.
Yeah, it really is awesome to see like your passion and what you do. I guess let some of the listeners know. I mean, some of the big HVAC brands that you've done, or just some brands that you've done that they may know.
Yeah, I mean, we've done Ken Goodrich at Gettle. We did his brand. We did the Sunny Plumber for Ken when he had the plumbing division. Victor Rancor is out in California for Absolute Airflow. Was a brand that's actually a year. That's a year last month that brand launched. So 1 year, 125% increase in revenue in 1 year. So that's like really great stats that we've seen there. Seatown Electric in Seattle is another one that we've done. I think that they were about 9 or 8 million when we rebranded them, and 24 months later, they're at almost 20. And that was a great example too of ROI attributed to the vehicles, because we were able to track the amount of revenue that they received from phone calls derived from the vehicle. You know, one of the great things about Service Titan is that you can track your inbound lead sources. So we had the data before that brand launched, and we had the data after the brand launched, and how much more revenue was being attributed to them. And for them, it was like a 16x increase in revenue attributed to the truck wraps. So that's when you look at ROI as well and say, you know, obviously they're getting more phone calls, they're getting more leads just from the vehicles being redone. Another big company we rebranded was Gem Plumbing and Heating on the East Coast, up in Rhode Island, based in Rhode Island. And again, that was another one that with only 50% of the trucks wrapped, they got, I think, 4 times the number of phone calls. So it was like, wow, we got 4 times the number of phone calls with only 25% of the fleet rewrapped at that point. And then the revenue associated with that too was really great to see. So, you know, again, too, it's really cool to make pretty things, but I love making pretty things that are based on data and what we know works and what doesn't work. So that's another big part of it too, is thinking about, you know, how these brands function in the real world, and having access to this data is really helpful, because you can see which brands, you know, really took hold and their approaches. Because, you know, you'll have people that say mascots don't work, or mascots, you know, are dead and too many people use mascots. And like, you have to realize, first of all, that like blanket statements don't work like that, because it really is all dependent on the market to decide whether or not a mascot works or doesn't work. But the data that we have for brands that have deployed a mascot show that they work really well, that they connect with consumers in a meaningful way. The problem with most mascots that you see is that they're really poorly executed. So that's the caveat, is, you know, maybe there are too many mascots out there, but there aren't a lot of really well done mascots out there. So that's kind of the difference. But Gem was a really clean and corporate approach, whereas Seatown Electric in Seattle was a retro themed, you know, it's actually right behind my head above the word brand. That's the Seatown Electric one. And that one was more of a nostalgia mascot based approach, you know, with that bright orange and teal color scheme. And they didn't have like an awful brand to begin with. It was just generic. It was that white van that we were talking about, a white van. You know, the lettering was legible. You could see it, but if I'm a consumer, it just blends. Like nothing's going to turn my head to say, oh, that looks really cool. Like, it's not like that. So, you know, we've seen both approaches work. It's largely just going to be driven, well, what else is happening in your market to say which approach is the right approach for you.
That's awesome. Well, what's the closest brand you've done to Baltimore, like to me? I would love to see one of your trucks driving around.
He did Ron Nelson's.
Oh, that's
right. We just finished Ron's.
Yeah, that just launched. Colonial Heating and Air. There. I thought near you.
There is a Colonial.
Yeah, that was one that's near you, I think. It's another one that starts with an M. I thought out by you, not Michael's, obviously. I gotta look on my map, but yeah.
No, it's fine. Yeah, Ron's looks good. Maybe me and Ryan are gonna have to sit down and talk with you, Dan.
Okay.
I know we got a lot of things that we're trying to do, but I do really love that. I think some of the things in the direction we're trying to go, making us pop would really help catapult what we're trying to do, and actually kickstart some of the plans we already have.
Right.
You know
And that's what you see is it's like this inflection point. It's like the catalyst to really accelerate the growth, when it's done right, and I want to say one thing too, I know we're probably running short on time, but the one thing I want to say is the idea that the rollout for a rebrand is also really important. So you have businesses that are maybe scared about what a rollout looks like, or am I going to lose customers? Are they not going to know who we are anymore? And so how do you roll out a rebrand or a renaming, which is double, right? So it's not just a new name, it's a new logo. And the process for doing that has to be done very methodically, right? So and we handle that for a lot of clients, the rollout, like we did it 100% for Jason, didn't miss a beat, killed it right off the bat. But you've got to notify the customers. You've got to explain the whys. Well, why did we change? We don't want them to think that you went out of business or you got sued and that's why you had to change the name. We've got to address those things. And you want to communicate to everyone. So we usually do a direct mail to every single customer in your database. We do the email marketing. Obviously, we change all the social channels. We get all your Google reviews switched over to the new name. All those platform changes for social media will get changed over. So you do it in a way that's not disruptive. You tell the client that they're going to start seeing changes in your brand, because it may not be that you can roll out one day this new brand and every single truck is rewrapped and Monday morning you're this new company. So there's a period of time where you have to kind of coexist with the old brand and the new brand. So you lead in with those conversations with the customers so they understand. The big things that we've seen too is like sometimes they'll have questions about their warranty now. Now that you change the name of your company, are their warranties still valid? So you've got to be ahead of those communications. You've got to tell them what's happening, that nothing is changing. It's still the same great company, et cetera. But this is why we changed. We're grateful for you, allowing us to serve the community, et cetera. And you spin it in a way that's very positive. But again, the rollout has to be done methodically. But if it's done that way, it's not disruptive. There's not a hiccup in that process. Bueller literally did close on a Friday and open on Monday as Bueller. Like he had 6 trucks waiting in the back of his business and they weren't out in the street, brand new Ford Transits. And then, it's like the light switched, but he's more the exception. Most guys don't roll it out like that. It's very difficult to do that literally all at once like that.
Yeah, I bet that would be, because I know we're in the process of we've been getting a bunch of the new Dodge vans, and we have a couple of them that have been wrapped, but we eventually wanted the whole fleet to be that way. So it's like once we get those vans, just once they're here, it's like let's just wrap them once the right way and never have to worry about it again.
Exactly.
So it's one of those things. It's just it's scary, but you realize, like we spend all this money in advertising and put money here. And that's what I meant by it's like something like this. It'll help take the burden off of some of these other things that we're thinking about because it kind of handles itself.
Yeah.
So, and especially here, it's big that people want to be in the Baltimore, DC market. If you can have, it's funny because it's 2 totally different markets as far as like the cost of what things are. But if you could have a brand that people knew who you were in Baltimore and in DC, that would be huge because nobody's done it yet. You're either in this area or you're in this area. And if we could finally be the one that people know who we are in both places, I'd be pretty damn happy because that would be amazing. That might be the plan for the future. It sucks. We start to get like an hour. If we do podcasts longer than an hour, we always say guys start wrecking vans and stuff because they can't, their attention spans. This is, I thank you for coming on, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much.
So fond of your work, seeing what you do. And, I know that all your trucks have always been amazing. They look amazing, but being able to speak to you and hear like the details and the reasons behind it just makes it so much more amazing. You know what I mean? Like the reasons why you do things. It's not just to make it look pretty, there's so much more to it. I guess I'll just leave it at that. So that's really awesome what you're doing.
And I'm just so grateful to have the opportunity to work with guys like you. It's just, that's why I'm doing this, and 25 years later or 30 years later, like I still wake up every morning and I'm like super excited about what we're doing. And that's, people are like, when are you going to retire? I'm like, I don't know, like, it's not like a job to me. Like, I come here and I play and I have fun and I love what I do. So I'm just really fortunate that we've been able to work with so many companies and develop relationships with clients. And, you know, a lot of these guys are my friends now. And I love that we've been able to play a role in their success. And I think there's no better thing to do with yourself and to help a business grow and succeed and hire more people and all those things. Like where else can you do that? Like, it's amazing. And I'm so blessed and I'm so fortunate.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, it's well deserved too, man. You're doing a great job, and obviously you're getting some of the rewards back. I mean, people are recognizing your work. It's just it is amazing. So greatly appreciate you coming on and speaking with us tonight.
Yeah, real fast before we let you go. Anybody who's listening, if you're thinking about doing this, you're in that position, don't be one of the guys that goes to the local. Not saying other people can't do what Dan does. I'm not saying that, but he's proven, and everybody that we know in the industry who is anybody has used him. They can vouch for him. So if you're in this market, guys, get in touch with Dan over at Kick Charge and let him do it right. If it costs a little bit, whatever it is, but do it right the first time, so you're not kicking your ass down the road for having to do it a second time and it costs even more. Okay. I can't highly say that, because we see too many people, like we said in the groups, who are getting these raps. They're spending all this money and it's a train wreck. So just get it right, the first time. So thank you, Dan. We appreciate you, sir.
Thanks, guys.
All right, let's go ahead and close this out, Cal.
So the main thing, hopefully you guys took some notes. I know one of the main things that I took away is something that he said before we actually even got on and started recording, but then we did touch on it briefly during the recording, which is what do people feel about your company? Like when they see your brand rolling down the road, or they pass your business with your sign up, like what does that make them feel? And although I know in my heart, like what I want people to feel, am I doing a good job at communicating that message with them? And that's what I meant by I know that's been an aha for me tonight. Is that's something that I've got to put those two pieces together somehow, and I'm sure Dan could probably help me with that, even just that portion of it, if we didn't rebrand. So since I just rebranded not very long ago, but anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review, share it with your friends, family, coworkers, and this has been great. So go make money.
Yeah, man, I agree with Kelley. First of all, I want to say this real fast. I'm excited to be back recording with Kelley. I've missed you, buddy. I know it's been a little bit. We're finally taken. My dad would smack me if he was alive. You heard me say taken a little while to get back on track. But yeah, this one has really been fun. I've always known that brand has been important, but when you start to learn things and you hear people talk like Dan and stuff like that, you just realize it's so much more to it, and what the customer thinks when they see it. And it just really makes you think in a whole different direction, especially if you own a company and you spend all this money in advertising. You realize maybe I'm just pissing this money away because the product I'm selling a good product, but the package I'm putting it in is kind of shit, and you really got to think about that. So I mean, you can wrap up a turd in a shiny box, but it's still a turd. You know what I mean? So we got to try to think about all that when we do it. So this has really been eye-opening. So like, I can't say it enough, and I'll say it again. If any of you are out there and you're in this market, please give Kick Charge, a call. And everybody that me and Kelley know personally who's dealt with them has loved it. They're kicking ass. They're killing it, and it's been successful. And that's just, you can look at it. I mean, you don't got to listen to us. You can see the proof is in the pudding. But all right, guys, we hope you guys have set your goals for the new year. You guys are out there kicking ass. We love you. We miss you. Thank you so much for the support. We're ready to make 2021 our bitch, and, just keep doing what we got to do. We love you guys. Remember, man, do the little things, set yourself apart. All right. The little things the next guy's not doing. Okay. Always stay safe out there. Always make it home the same way you left. All right, guys, until next week, I'll talk with you motherfuckers later. All right. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the HVAC Uncensored podcast. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Instagram, or email us anytime at hvacuncensored@gmail.com. Now, get back to work. Shut this down. The views and opinions shared on the HVAC Uncensored podcast may not necessarily be the views and opinions of our sponsors or guests.